Evelyn had never been inside a television studio before. She had seen them only in pictures and in short behind-the-scenes clips that played after her favorite afternoon shows. In those clips, everything looked calm and bright, like a friendly living room. In real life, the studio felt very different. It was cold from the air conditioning. It smelled faintly of fresh paint and hot metal. The lights were not soft at all, they were giant suns hanging from the ceiling, pointed down at the stage like curious eyes. Every seat had a number. Every aisle had tape on the floor. Every person seemed to be moving with purpose. Evelyn held her paper ticket and followed the usher, one small step at a time, her grandson right behind her. Liam had begged her to come. "It will be fun, Nana," he had said that morning, bouncing on the balls of his feet. He was 19 and forever excited about new things. He kept up with music, gadgets, and shows that changed topics every 3 minutes. He had won the audience passes by answering a quiz online faster than thousands of others. When he learned the show would film in their city, he phoned her at once. "We have to go together," he said. "You've never seen a live show. And I never want to do my first one without you." So Evelyn dressed in her best lilac cardigan and a neat gray skirt, the kind that let her sit comfortably without worrying about wrinkles. She pinned her small silver brooch to the sweater. It was shaped like a treble clef. Her late husband had given it to her many years ago when she taught neighborhood children to play simple tunes on a second-hand piano. She had not taught in a long time. Life got busy. People moved. Money got tight for lessons. But she still loved the feel of the brooch. It reminded her of soft afternoons when music drifted through open windows with the smell of jasmine tea. At the studio doors, a woman with a headset scanned their passes and smiled. "Row D, seats 12 and 13, she said. "You two are early. Good energy. The host will love you." They took their seats and looked around. The stage was shiny and smooth, like a lake at night. There were 3 chairs where the judges would sit. There was a couch and a coffee table for interviews. And at the far left, not quite in the center, stood a humble upright piano. It had a few small scratches on its side, as if it had traveled a lot and knew many rooms. The little bench looked short for a tall person, but just right for Evelyn's small frame. She glanced at it and felt a quiet pull in her chest. She did not plan to play. No one had asked her. She simply enjoyed the sight of the instrument the way one enjoys spotting a favorite tree in a new park. The audience warmed up as the clock on the wall counted down. A comedian came out first. He taught them how to clap loudly. He taught them where to laugh, and where to oh. He pointed to signs that would light up when they were supposed to cheer. "You are part of the show," he said in a friendly tone. "The cameras love happy faces." Evelyn practiced a small cheer with Liam. It felt a little silly, but also fun. She liked seeing him so bright and proud beside her. When the host ran onto the stage, the crowd jumped to its feet on cue. He wore a sharp blue suit that shimmered under the lights. He had quick eyes and a lively grin, and he moved as if he were dancing. His voice filled the room. He told a few jokes about traffic and coffee and the city's changing weather. People laughed easily. It was a relief to laugh together after the long lines and the chill of the air vents. Then he introduced the judges, who waved charmingly and sat down with their shining mugs. Everything ran like a new clock. Halfway through the first segment, a producer with a clipboard began walking along the aisles, looking at the audience members one by one. He wore sneakers and a black shirt and had a soft step, like someone used to moving around without being seen on camera. He paused at Evelyn's row. His eyes rested on her lilac sweater and silver brooch. He leaned toward her and smiled. "How are you enjoying the show, ma'am?" he asked. "It's lovely," she said, keeping her voice calm so it would not shake. "Wonderful," he replied. "We have a small surprise today. It's a cheerful part of the program." We call it play it or pay it. Ever heard of it? Liam nodded eagerly. That's the game where an audience member gets to try a talent for 30 seconds, he whispered. If they do it, the whole row wins gift cards. The producer grinned. Exactly. It's just for fun, he said to Evelyn. Nothing heavy. Would you be willing to help us make a few smiles? No pressure. Evelyn looked at Liam's bright face. She looked at the stage lights and the small piano on the left side. Her heart gave a shy thump. She had always believed in trying new things with grace. If it helps the show, she said quietly, I can try. Perfect, the producer replied. He clipped a small badge beside her seat number and whispered to a camera operator. Then he moved on to the next row, still scanning, still choosing. Evelyn sat still, hands folded, and took a slow breath. She was not sure what she would be asked to do. She did not expect to be the star of anything. She was simply part of a cheerful plan to make the room lively. The show moved forward, a quick interview with a local hero, a magic trick with scarves, a cute video of a dog rescuing a toy from a pool. The crowd softened and sighed as one. Then the host clapped his hands and turned toward the audience with a playful spark. It's time for play it or pay it, he announced. Let's find someone with hidden talent. Music played, a little drum roll, a cheerful bell. A spotlight roamed the seats like a curious cat. Evelyn lifted her chin, more amused than nervous now. The light paused on a man in a baseball cap. It slid to a woman in bright red shoes. Then it landed on Evelyn and stayed there, warm and round, bathing her sweater in a soft glow. Hello there, the host called. What's your name? She lifted the microphone a staff member offered and said, My name is Evelyn. Evelyn, he repeated, smiling. You look kind and wise and like someone who has seen a few seasons of life. Would you be willing to try a small task for us? If you do it, your whole row wins a treat. Evelyn felt her cheeks warm. I can try, she said. Her voice sounded steady to her own ears, and that gave her courage. Wonderful. Now, the game is simple, the host said. You can choose to play one instrument for 30 seconds. Or if you'd rather not, you can pass, and you and your row donate today's prize to a music charity. Either way, we all win. He winked at the judges, who chuckled politely. Evelyn looked toward the instruments lined at the back, a triangle, a tambourine, a small drum. Then her gaze slipped to the upright piano on the left of the stage. It was not part of the game's display. It was there for later in the show, most likely for the house band or a guest. But it stood within reach, old and patient, as if it were waiting. May I choose the piano? She asked. The host made a playful face, his eyebrows jumping. The piano? That's a bold pick, he said, and a little ripple of laughter moved through the crowd. It was not mean laughter, just surprised. 30 seconds on a piano is not like 30 seconds with a triangle. It is a lot of keys for a small moment. All right, Evelyn. Let's see what we can do. A stagehand brought her down the steps carefully, one hand ready near her elbow, though she moved with sure, small steps. Liam watched from the row, hands pressed together as if he were holding a warm cup. He did not shout. He did not wave. He simply sent her a steady look that said, You've got this. On stage, the piano looked a little older than it had from far away. The varnish was dull in spots. One of the pedals had a tiny squeak when she tested it lightly with her shoe. The bench was low. She touched it, then the key lid, then the side of the piano, as if saying hello to an old friend. The host stood near the judges with a friendly grin. Take your time, he said, but the band played a playful hurry-up riff, and the audience tittered again at the joke. Evelyn smiled softly. May I raise the bench a little? She asked a sound tech. We can slide a block under it, he said, and a small crate appeared, neat and square. They lifted the bench, set it down, and she tried again. Better. Her feet could find the pedals without reaching too far. She placed her hands in her lap for a second and breathed in through her nose, out through her mouth, the way she had taught small students to calm their nerves. One of the judges leaned toward another and whispered something behind a hand. The camera caught only the shape of the words, not the sound. The audience picked up a hint of it and smiled again, thinking this was all part of the fun. The house band waited with instruments ready to fill a pause if needed. The host watched Evelyn with a light expression that said he expected a sweet attempt, no more, no less. But for Evelyn, the light softened for a moment. The crowd seemed to fade into a gentle blur. The piano filled her view. She remembered the smell of old sheet music and the feel of little fingers under hers, years ago, when she guided children through their first C major scale. She remembered the pride on a shy child's face when a simple tune came out right for the first time. Music, to her, was not a trick or a race. It was a place you could enter and be made new. She lifted the key cover and let it rest open. She placed her right hand lightly on middle C and her left 2 notes below, just to feel the distance. Her fingers were not as fast as they once were, but they knew where to land. They remembered shapes the way feet remember the steps from the front door to the garden in the dark. "Ready when you are," the host said, his voice kind, perhaps a bit amused. A little timer graphic appeared on the big screen above the stage, 30 seconds. It flashed once, waiting for the first note to start the count. Evelyn turned her head slightly toward the audience and found Liam's face again. He did not cheer. He did not signal anything dramatic. He simply mouthed 3 small words, careful and slow so she could read them even from far away, "You've got this." She nodded, almost to herself. Then she faced the keys once more, lifted her wrists, and let her hands float into position. The studio, with its tape lines and signs and bright machines, became briefly quiet, like a room holding its breath. The host raised his microphone, ready to throw in a light joke if the first note stumbled. One judge lined up a playful comment. The band leader curled his fingers above his strings, listening for a cue. Up in the control room, a producer hovered over a switch, prepared to cut to a quick commercial if the moment fell flat. Evelyn placed both feet on the floor and softly tested the right pedal with the tip of her shoe. The squeak was not loud. It would be fine if she moved gently. She glanced once at the keys, ivory and black, little cities of sound, and then closed her eyes for a heartbeat to steady the tiny tremor in her hands. The tremor faded, not by force, but by kindness and breath. She opened her eyes again. The camera light glowed red. The timer waited to begin. The room, enormous and full a second ago, now seemed to have one small center, a woman, a bench, and an old upright piano with a mood of its own. Her fingers sank, feather-light, toward the keys. The first note was soft and careful, like the start of a whisper. The red light above the main camera blinked, and the timer on the big screen began to count, 30. 29. 28. A small wave of laughter ran through the seats, not unkind, only unsure. People expected a few shaky sounds and then a quick end. Evelyn felt the room's attention sit on her shoulders like a light shawl. It did not crush her. It reminded her to sit tall. She played one more note, then another, making a simple pattern with her right hand. Middle C, D, E, back to D, back to C. She pressed the right pedal a touch and let the sound glow. Her left hand rested on her knee. Her fingers were warm now. She took a slow breath and lifted her left hand to join. The host smiled at the judges as if to say, "See, sweet and short," and raised his mic for a friendly comment. But he did not speak yet. Something about the way Evelyn's fingers curved made him wait. The audience quieted, curious. The band leader lowered his hands and nodded to his players to hold. The sound tech turned a dial to balance the piano better. The notes came through clean and gentle, like a small light in a deep bowl. Evelyn stretched the pattern to a scale, up and back down, then added a left-hand shape that felt like home, C with G above it, then F with C above it, then G with D above it. It was the old I, 4, V world she had taught to many children. Not a trick. Not a test. A doorway. The timer reached 20. She heard the crowd exhale together. She saw the tiny shimmer of the camera lens catching the reflection of her hands. She felt the bench settle under her, steady as a friend. Her heart still beat a little fast, but in a friendly way, like someone jogging beside you and saying, "We're okay. Keep going." A judge tilted his head. He had been ready with a light joke about Grandma's lullaby. The words faded from his mind as he watched her wrists float and fall with care. He noticed how her shoulders stayed relaxed. He noticed how she was not frightened by the clock. Instead, she was making a small room inside the big room, a room made of sounds. The host tried again to speak, then stopped and smiled to himself. He lowered his mic. The floor manager in the wings, who lived by schedules and seconds, lifted a hand to say, "Let her have it." The red tally light stayed on. The show, for a moment, belonged to the piano. Evelyn shaped the notes into a tune. It started as a simple hymn from her childhood, then softened into something like river water, then circled back to the hymn again. She did not copy the song exactly. She let it breathe. A sticky key clicked near the top. She made a tiny path around it without fuss. Her ears had practice with old pianos and their proud little noises. Age does not frighten what is old and true. The timer reached 12. She looked at the keys and saw, for a breath, a small classroom from years ago. Sunlight fell across a second-hand piano. A child frowned at a new chord and then, with a laugh, found it. The child's mother, tired from work, stood in the door and listened, her face softening line by line. Those were ordinary afternoons that felt like gifts. Those afternoons had ended when money grew tight and the neighborhood moved and life changed. But the music had never gone away. It had only gone quiet, like seeds in winter. She felt her eyes prickle, not from sadness, but from a kind of thank you that rose up when old loves are allowed to breathe again. She blinked, and the studio returned. The big clock said 8. The host met her eyes and gave a tiny, honest nod. Not a show nod. A human nod. Liam leaned forward in row D, hands still clasped. He could see the small changes in her face that others could not see, the way her mouth relaxed when a phrase landed right, the way her left thumb tucked under smoothly at the bottom of a run, the way her eyebrows lifted just a little when she made space for a gentle chord. He thought of days when she sat beside him at their small kitchen table, tapping rhythms with a pencil while he did his homework. She had a way of making effort feel peaceful. He felt that same peace fill him now. The last 5 seconds flashed above the stage. Evelyn smiled, almost amused, and placed a soft cadence where a finish would make sense. She let the final note hang like a small silver bell. The timer hit 0, and the audience clapped, polite at first, then louder. The host stepped forward quickly, cheerful again, ready to give the prize and keep the show moving. "Beautiful try, Evelyn," he said warmly. "That was sweet." Row D, you. Evelyn lifted one finger, gentle as a door knock. "May I play 10 more seconds?" she asked, her voice carrying just enough to reach the judges and the first rows. "Only to complete the idea." "I will be brief." The request was small and respectful. The room liked her for it. The host, who could feel audiences like a weather vane feels wind, turned to the producer. The producer made a fast circle with his finger, "Keep rolling." The band leader smiled and set his hands in his lap. The judge who had prepared the Grandma's lullaby line placed his card face down. "Go ahead," the host said. 10 seconds. She did not waste a breath. She slid into a neighboring key and answered her own short melody with a gentle echo, like a friend finishing your sentence kindly. It was not showy. It was complete. She landed on a soft chord and lifted her hands with care, as if the keys were made of thin glass. Then she folded her hands in her lap and nodded to the piano as one nods to a person. The applause felt different this time. It was warmer, less surprised, more grateful. The host laughed a clean laugh, not a joke, just the joy of a room agreeing on something. "All right," he said. "Evelyn, you have lovely touch. Rodi, thanks to Evelyn's courage, you all receive your gift cards." And he looked at the judges, who were whispering, "And I think we might want to hear a little more later, if you're willing." Evelyn's cheeks went pink. "Thank you," she said simply. The show moved on. The next segment, a quick interview, a short game with two guests. But something had shifted. People kept glancing toward the upright piano. The camera operators adjusted their plans to include it in more frames. The sound tech kept the piano mic on the board, just in case. The judge, who had almost joked, now watched Evelyn in the audience between takes. He saw how she held herself with quiet ease. He noticed the treble clef brooch on her sweater. He leaned to the other judges and said, "She has training, you know." The second judge nodded. "And heart." During a short break, a young assistant hurried to Rodi with a glass of water. "For you," she told Evelyn softly. "In case your throat is dry. Lights can do that." Evelyn thanked her and took a sip. The assistant lingered, the way a person lingers near a soft song. "My grandmother played, too," she said, almost shy. "I miss the sound." Then she smiled and rushed back to her station. Liam looked at his grandmother. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Alive," she said, and laughed at the simple truth of it. Her hands, which had trembled a little before, now felt strong and light. Her shoulders rested low. She looked around and saw faces, real faces, not an ocean of strangers anymore. The stage looked less like a machine and more like a room again. "I did not know I would need that," she added, as if she were talking to herself. The host walked on for the next piece and glanced at the upright piano again. He had the fast mind of a person who could solve puzzles while smiling at a camera. He changed the plan a little. "Friends," he said after the new guest spoke, "I have a thought. Sometimes a moment taps us on the shoulder and asks us to listen longer. Would you all like to hear a little more from Evelyn before we close today's show?" The audience cheered, not wildly, but with real feeling. The judges sat up straighter. The band leader looked both excited and gentle, like a person greeting a dear visitor at the door. Evelyn's eyes widened. She had not expected this. "Only if it is useful," she said when a stagehand offered her a hand. "I do not wish to take time from others." The stagehand shook his head with a smile. "You are part of the show now." They helped her down again, and this time she did not feel small. She felt exactly the right size for her own life. The host stood near the couch, but he did not make a wall of himself. He made space. "Would you like the band to join you?" he asked. "May we try something simple together?" she said, glancing at the players. "A slow waltz, perhaps, and then a little walk through a familiar tune." The band leader nodded. "We can follow," he said softly. He lifted his hands and gave his drummer a look that meant, brushes, not sticks. He set the bass player with a light nod that meant, keep it soft. The trumpet player rested his horn on his lap and smiled. He did not need to be in this part. Not every gift needs a ribbon. Evelyn tested the pedal again. The squeak was still there, but it felt friendly now, like the tiny creak in an old door at home. She placed her hands in a waltz, left hand steady 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right hand free to sing. The band slid in beneath her like warm air under a kite. The sound filled the studio in a way that made people sit back and then lean forward, both at once. She moved from the waltz into a tune the city knew, a melody from a local film that families had loved for years. The audience recognized it after 2 measures and smiled as one. Recognition can feel like a hug. The judges' faces softened. The camera did not jump now, it stayed with her hands, then her face, then the band leader's small, pleased nod. Halfway through, the sticky key clicked again. Evelyn did not fight it. She slid around the spot, turned the click into a tiny grace note, and landed back where she meant to be, as if she had planned it all along. The band leader grinned. This was not a beginner. This was someone who could hear a room and shape it. In row D, Liam felt his throat tighten. He remembered a day when he was little and had fallen on the playground. He had not been hurt badly, only startled. His grandmother had brought him inside, washed the dirt from his knee, and hummed a small tune while she worked. He could still hum it. The tune had told him, "You are safe." He felt that same message move through him now, but it was bigger. It seemed to flow through the entire studio. The host stood near the edge of the stage with his mic at his side. The audience, without being told, grew very quiet. Even the big lights seemed to hum a little less. The music unrolled like a ribbon across the room, steady, clear, kind. When she ended, she did not strike a large chord. She let the melody bow its head and rest. She lifted her hands, then placed them in her lap. The room was still for a heartbeat, then 2. Then the applause came, not in a rush, but in a wave that kept growing. People stood up. Some wiped their eyes without embarrassment. The host clapped with his whole face. The judges were smiling in a way that made them look more like themselves and less like TV. Evelyn stood slowly and gave a small, grateful bow, the way she had taught her students, not too low, not too quick, enough to say thank you and I see you. The host walked over, but he did not interrupt. He waited until the room had given its thanks. That, he said quietly into the mic, was lovely. He turned to the judges, who nodded. One of them asked if she would tell the audience a bit about her music life. She did not give a speech. She said, "I used to teach children in my neighborhood. Many of them learned only for a little while. They had many things to do. But they kept the music in their hearts. I think I did, too." The host looked at the producer, who was off to the side with a stack of cards for the next bit. The producer sighed in the best way and put the cards down. He made a new decision with a quick, brave brain. The show would make room for this. He gave a new signal to the camera crew, "Hold steady, stay kind." They led Evelyn back to row D, and as she sat, people reached out to squeeze her hand or touch her shoulder lightly, always with gentle care. The assistant who had brought the water gave her a thumbs up and then dashed away to her next task, bright with energy. When the show resumed, everything felt easier, like a room after someone opens a window. The host did a short interview with a young inventor and made sure to link the talk to the feeling in the room, creativity, patience, small steps that become big changes. The judges' comments were less sharp and more thoughtful. The band played with a little more space between notes. Near the end of the hour, the host made one more change. "Before we close," he said, "I would like to invite Evelyn to the stage one final time today, if she would like to play a few closing notes. Only if she wishes." Evelyn looked to Liam. He nodded. She rose, not because she needed attention, but because the music wanted to say a gentle farewell. She walked to the piano once more, sat, and played a soft, short phrase, no more than 8 bars. It felt like a goodbye that promises a hello another day. The show ended with smiles that were not forced. As the lights lowered for the credits, the audience did not rush to the aisles. They lingered. People looked at one another with that small, surprised warmth that comes when strangers share a good moment. Evelyn stood, and as she did, the judge who had planned the grandma's lullaby line came down from his chair and walked toward her with care, as if approaching a delicate flower in a garden. "May I speak with you after?" he asked softly. "I have an idea." Evelyn nodded, calm and curious. The host watched this from a few steps away and felt a true excitement rise. Something good was starting, and he knew it. He turned toward the camera that was still rolling a little for the web stream and said, from his heart, "Sometimes, we come to make noise and leave with music." Back in her seat, Evelyn reached for Liam's hand. He squeezed it. She looked at the piano and gave it one last, small nod, like a promise between old friends. The room felt full of light, though the big lamps were dimming. And in that soft light, without any big announcement, the next part of her story began to open. Backstage after the show, the bright lights dimmed to a softer glow. People walked quickly with clipboards and cables, but their voices were quiet. The judge, who had almost made a joke earlier, came toward Evelyn with careful steps. He was in his 50s, with kind eyes that looked newly awake. "I'm Daniel Hale," he said, offering his hand. "I judged too quickly. Your touch was beautiful. May I apologize?" Evelyn shook his hand. "Thank you," she said. "We all make quick guesses sometimes." A producer joined them, a woman with a headset and tired shoulders. "I'm Nadia," she said. "I planned that little game segment. It was meant to be light, but I see now it was clumsy. I'm sorry. I would like to make it right." Liam stood close to his grandmother, alert but calm. He was not sure what would be asked. He only knew he did not want anyone to use her as a joke again. Nadia took a breath. "Would you come back next week?" she asked. "We could film a short piece about your music. Not a prank. A real spotlight. We'll tune the piano. We'll give you time." Evelyn looked from Nadia to Mr. Hale and then to the shadowed stage. The upright piano waited under a thin dust of light, like a friend lingering by the door. "I would like to share," she said slowly. "But I have one request. Please, keep the tone respectful. Many people begin late or begin again in life. They deserve kindness." "We can do that," Mr. Hale said quickly. Nadia nodded. "Yes," she said, and her voice sounded like a promise she meant to keep. On the ride home, Liam's phone buzzed with message after message. Friends sent short clips of the performance. Family members wrote with many shining heart emojis. Someone had posted a photo of Evelyn's hands on the keys. Under it, people were writing things like, "Reminds me of my grandma," and, "I started learning again at 60. There were a few comments that called it staged or too neat, but most replies were gentle and firm. "You can hear her control. This is real." Liam showed a few messages to Evelyn, not to make her proud in a loud way, but to show her the quiet thread her music had pulled in many hearts. At home, the kitchen felt warm and honest. The kettle clicked on. The clock hummed. Evelyn sat at the little table and touched the silver treble clef brooch at her collar. "I gave away my old piano when we moved," she said, thinking out loud. "The school needed it. I have nothing to practice on." "We can fix that," Liam said. "I'll ask around. Someone will have a keyboard we can borrow. Or maybe the community center has one in the back." He sent 2 messages. In less than an hour, a neighbor from down the hall, Mrs. Khan, replied, "We have an upright piano. My daughter no longer plays. It needs a friend. Come." The words were simple and kind. Evelyn put on her cardigan and walked with Liam down the corridor. In Mrs. Khan's living room, the upright stood near a sunny window. It was a little out of tune, but its wood shone. Evelyn put her hands on the keys and pressed them gently, as if asking, "May I?" The notes answered yes. "Please use it," Mrs. Khan said. "Music makes good air." For the next hour, Evelyn practiced scales and small songs, taking breaks to stretch her fingers and shake her arms softly the way she had taught her students long ago. Her hands felt warm and ready, not fast, but patient. She was surprised to see that the old muscle memory was not gone. It was like a path under grass, still there when you step on it again. Liam balanced his phone on a stack of books and recorded a few short clips, just enough to send to Nadia so the show could plan. When Evelyn finished, he made tea for the three of them. They sat by the window, sipping, while evening came on like a slow curtain. "If you return to the show," Mrs. Khan said, "play what you played today by the window." It felt like home. The next morning, Nadia called with details. "We can do a special segment," she said. "We'll call it Begin Again. You play, and then we talk about how anyone can start or restart. We'll also invite a local music teacher to share tips." She paused. "One more thing. Our sponsor sometimes pushes for humor. They might ask for signs or costumes. I will push back. Are you comfortable if I say we want a quiet tone?" "Yes," Evelyn said. "Quiet is brave." After the call, she felt a flutter of doubt. It passed, then returned. What if her hands shook? What if she could not find the right word during the interview? She stood at the sink and watched water ribbon from the tap. She smiled at her own reflection in the window glass. Begin again, she told herself, the way she had told children who missed a note. That afternoon, Liam printed out a few pages of sheet music from songs Evelyn loved and set them on the table. "You don't have to play these exactly," he said. "You can play your own version. But it might help to have a map." They walked back to Mrs. Khan's apartment. A small group of neighbors had gathered, all very quiet, as if they had entered a small library. A boy of 10 stood near the couch, hands in pockets. "I quit lessons last year," he said shyly to Evelyn. "I wasn't good. But I liked your music on TV." "Perhaps you didn't quit," Evelyn said gently. "Perhaps you paused. Would you like to sit with me for a minute? We can try a scale together." He nodded, nervous and bright, and sat at the edge of the bench while she showed him how to let his fingers be curved, not stiff. After 2 minutes, his face changed. He had found a small path. Liam watched and felt a plan forming. "Nana," he said later in the hallway, "what if, when you go back on the show, you play, and then we invite someone from the audience to sit and try a scale? Just one. No pressure. Just to let people feel the keys." Evelyn thought about it. "If it is done with care," she said, "yes. But only if the person wants to. We must never push." Over the next 2 days, the short clip of Evelyn's first performance reached more people. Local radio mentioned the grandmother who changed the room. A small music shop offered to loan a well-tuned upright for the segment. The shop owner brought it to the studio himself. "My mother began lessons at 70, he told Nadia with a smile. "She said music makes the day longer in a good way." On the third day, a different kind of message reached Nadia. A sponsor representative sent a cheerful email with pictures of silly hats and suggested signs like "Go Granny," and "Oops." Nadia frowned, then walked to the host's office. He sat with a coffee and a stack of notes. She showed him the email. He read it and shook his head. "No," he said, not loud, but clear. "We invited her for respect. We keep it that way." Nadia exhaled and smiled. "Thank you," she said. She wrote back to the sponsor, "We are going with a sincere segment. It will have strong response and reflect well on you." Then she returned to planning with a lighter step. On the day of the rehearsal, Evelyn and Liam arrived at the studio an hour early. The main stage was calmer than last time, as if the space itself remembered and approved. The new piano stood center left, polished and bright but not flashy. A piano tuner, a quiet man with a kind face, leaned over the open lid with a small tool. "Almost there," he said. "Just giving it a last listen." Evelyn tested a few keys when he finished. They sang. The sticky note from last week's upright was gone, of course, but she smiled anyway, as if greeting an old friend whose cough had cleared. Mr. Hale came by with a simple bouquet of small white flowers. "For you," he said. "No cameras. Just thanks." He looked a little shy, which made him seem more real. "Would you help us design the questions?" he asked. "I want to avoid anything that feels like a trick." "Ask me about teaching," she said. "Ask me what I learned from children. Ask me what music does for a day when a person feels small. Ask me about patience." "Perfect," he said, taking notes like a student. Just before the rehearsal began, a tiny complication arrived. The rights team told Nadia that the well-known film melody Evelyn had played in Part 2 would require a license they could not clear in time for broadcast. "We need something else," Nadia told Evelyn gently. "I'm sorry. We do not want to mute you or rush fees. Could you play something traditional? Or something you wrote?" Evelyn felt a flicker of panic and then a small, steady answer inside herself. "I can play an old hymn that is in the public domain," she said. "And then I can play a simple piece I made years ago for a child who needed help falling asleep. It is only a few phrases. It is mine to give." Nadia's face softened. "That sounds perfect," she said. "Your piece will be the heart." They ran through the order once. The band kept their distance to leave room for the piano's voice. The cameras found gentle angles. The host practiced saying her name without adding sparkle where it did not belong. When they finished, Nadia clapped her clipboard shut and smiled at Evelyn. "You're ready," she said. "We are, too." That night at home, Evelyn could not sleep at once. She made tea and opened a small wooden box of old mementos. Inside was a photo of her late husband, smiling on a summer day. There was also a paper with a line he had written in a neat hand: "Music stays." She touched the words and felt the truth of them. She missed him, but in a tender way that did not hurt. "Tomorrow," she whispered, as if telling him a plan before bed, as she had done for many years. Morning came bright and clear. Liam laid out her lilac cardigan and polished the treble clef brooch with a soft cloth. "You don't need any other sparkle," he said. "You make your own." At the studio doors, the guard recognized them and waved them in with a real smile. "Good to see you again," he said. "My mother watched your clip 3 times." In the hallway, the young assistant who had brought water on the first day greeted them with a small cheer. "I started lessons again," she told Evelyn. "You were my sign." Evelyn warmed her fingers in a bowl of water, then dried them and did a few slow hand circles. She sat at the piano and played very softly to greet the instrument. The keys felt friendly, like a path you know by heart. The live audience filed in. Some had signs, but they were simple and kind: "Begin again, music at any age, thank you, Evelyn." The host stepped out in his blue suit, a little less shiny under natural light settings. He welcomed the crowd, then turned to camera one with a calm face. "Today," he said, "we give the stage to someone who reminded us that talent has no age and kindness makes room for courage." Evelyn walked onto a clear, steady sound of applause. She sat, breathed in and out, and placed her hands on the keys. For one heartbeat, doubt pricked her: what if her mind went blank? What if her hands forgot? Then she saw Liam's steady gaze at the edge of the stage, felt the room's gentle hush, and heard the first note in her head. It was there, waiting, as it had always been. She began with the old hymn, slow and full, each chord like a firm step. The room settled. Then she moved into her own small piece, the lullaby she had written long ago, with a simple rise and fall that felt like breathing. Halfway through, she heard someone in the audience sigh in that way people sigh when they remember a good thing. She let the piece unfold without hurry. When she finished, the applause rose like warm air. The host walked over with careful steps. He did not rush to speak. He let the sound live for a moment. Then he said, "Will you tell us how you returned to this?" Evelyn spoke about pauses that are not endings. She spoke about teaching. She spoke about listening to one note until it tells you the next one. She spoke about how a person can feel small in a big world, and how a simple scale can be a rope to hold. Mr. Hale asked, "What would you say to someone who thinks it is too late to learn?" "I would say, begin today, for 5 minutes," she answered. "Then begin again tomorrow. That is all." The host looked at the audience. "Would anyone like to sit for 1 minute and try a C scale with Miss Evelyn?" he asked. A young mother lifted her hand, surprised at herself. Evelyn guided her to the bench, made space, and showed her where to place her fingers. The woman tried once, stumbled, laughed softly, and tried again. On the second try, the scale came out, simple and clear. The audience cheered, not for volume, but for courage. As the segment wrapped, a stage manager flashed a sign, 2 minutes. Nadia gave a thumbs up from the wings. Everything had gone right. And yet, as the music faded, a new challenge appeared at the edge of the plan. The control room signaled that a guest scheduled for the next act had cancelled at the last minute. Live time had opened like a pocket. The producer's eyes widened. She looked at the host, then at Evelyn, then at the piano. The host raised his brows in a question: could they fill the time with more music, something unplanned? Evelyn met Liam's eyes. He smiled, the small brave smile he used when facing a new road. She turned back to the host and nodded once. The host lifted his mic, ready to ask her for an encore that would be made up on the spot, with millions watching and only a breath to decide what to play next. The control room sent a quick message to the floor: the next guest had cancelled. A quiet pocket of live time had opened. The host glanced at the clock and then at Evelyn. His eyes asked a question before his mouth did. Could she help? Could she carry the moment? Evelyn felt the weight of it settle in her chest. It was not heavy like a stone. It was heavy like a promise. She looked at Liam at the side of the stage. He gave a small smile that said, "You can." She turned to the host and nodded once. The host raised his mic. "Friends," he said to the audience and the camera, "sometimes live TV gives us a gift we did not plan. If Miss Evelyn is willing, we would like to stay with the piano for a few more minutes. No tricks. No rush. Just music." The audience agreed with warm applause. The band leader lifted his hand to ask if they should join. Evelyn answered with a gentle wave. "Let me begin alone," she whispered. "Then you may come in softly." She sat again. This time, she did not open with a song she knew. She planned to make something new from the room itself. She looked out and saw a sea of faces that were no longer strangers. She heard the air vents, the gentle hum of cameras, the low rustle of clothing as people settled. She placed her hands on the keys and let one note sound. It was a clear G. She held it long enough for the room to recognize it. Then she placed an E below it, then a C. The simple shape rang like a doorbell: "We are home." She began to build a small theme. It had the steady bones of a hymn and the soft breath of a lullaby. She shaped it with slow, patient chords, not afraid of space. She left room between phrases the way a careful friend leaves space for you to answer. A light on the rig above flickered once. A camera near the back made a small whir as it slid to a better angle. In her earpiece, the host heard a voice say, "We have 3 minutes to fill." He looked to Nadia. She made a calm circle with her finger that meant, "Keep going. We are safe." Evelyn did not rush. She listened. She turned the theme on its side and let it show another face, a little brighter. Her left hand kept the floor strong and even. Her right hand found a high note and let it sing for just a breath, like a bird testing morning air. The band leader, watching her shoulders and hands, gave a tiny nod to the drummer. "Brushes," he mouthed. The drummer touched the snare with soft, dry strokes, barely there. The bass player slid in under the piano with long, low notes that felt like a heartbeat. They did not take the lead. They followed her breath. In the first row, the young mother who had tried a C scale held her hands under her chin. The boy from the building, who had said he had paused lessons, sat forward on the edge of his seat. Mrs. Khan, who had given her piano for practice, had found a ticket for the day and now dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. The security guard at the door leaned around the curtain, just enough to hear. Halfway through the improvised piece, a small trouble came. A soft buzz crept into the audio, a hiss you could miss if you did not listen for it. The sound tech noticed and pushed a fader. The hiss grew. It was a cable somewhere, a tiny fault that dared to spoil the quiet. Evelyn heard it, too. She did not stiffen. She made a small choice in 1 second. She lifted her hands and, with clear calm, said into the nearest mic, "May we bring the room sound down?" and the piano lit up. Her voice was gentle but sure, like a teacher managing a classroom storm. The stagehand moved. The tuner, who had stayed to watch, stepped forward and raised the piano lid to let the sound carry without so much help from the microphones. The sound tech pulled down the faulty channel and brought up a clean one. The hiss fell away. The room returned to clear air. She placed her hands back on the keys and found the theme where she had left it, like a bookmark in a favorite book. She climbed one small hill of notes and then came down the other side with a soft run that made the band leader smile. He could see her mind and her ears working together like old friends. In the control room, the monitor that tracked viewer messages lit up. Short notes began to scroll in. "This feels like Sunday morning, I can breathe, calling my aunt to listen, starting lessons again, my hands are old, but my heart is ready." Nadia watched with her hand over her mouth. She had planned many shows. Few felt like this. The host stood at the edge of the frame. He did not pace. He did not talk. He let the room be a room. He looked at Mr. Hale. The judge had his hand to his chest, his face open and plain. He looked like a person, not a TV shape. Evelyn's fingers found a new color. She moved to a minor key for a moment, giving the melody a small shadow. The room held its breath, then she brought the tune back to warm light. The small shadow did not vanish. It sat inside the light, honest and safe. People in the audience felt the rightness of it without words. Life has light and shade. Music can hold both. A sponsor representative stood near the wings with a nervous smile and a sign that read, "Time." Nadia took the sign, flipped it over, and wrote in thick marker, "Trust." She held that up instead. The rep looked puzzled, then put the sign down and watched like everyone else. Evelyn thought of her late husband's note in the box at home, "Music stays." She let the theme swell and then made a small bridge out of a simple scale. It was almost like a child's exercise, but the way she voiced it gave it weight. Step by step, the notes climbed, then turned, then rested. The audience did not clap between phrases. They had learned when to be still. Liam, at the side, watched her hands. He saw a tiny tremor in her left hand, the one that came when she was very tired. He knew the sign. He held his breath for a beat. She rested her left hand for 2 notes and carried the voice in her right hand alone for a moment, then brought the left back in with a gentle chord that set everything right again. The choice was quiet and clean. Most did not notice it at all. Liam did. His eyes stung with a mix of pride and care. The band leader felt the piece nearing a place to land. He signaled the drummer to thin the sound. He signaled the bass to hold and then release. Evelyn slowed, not by dragging, but by letting each note have a little more room to live. The last phrase came like a small bow. She set the final chord down as one sets a sleeping child in a bed and pulls the sheet smooth. Silence followed. It was not empty. It was full. It held for one long breath. Then the applause rose, not sharp, but deep, like water warming. People stood. Some wiped tears without hiding it. The host clapped the way he had clapped for his own father at a school concert long ago. Mr. Hale stood, his eyes bright, and did not try to speak over the sound. He let the room finish. Evelyn stood and gave a short bow. She did not wave. She did not pose. She simply said, "Thank you," and touched the piano with her fingertips, a small thank you to the instrument as well. The host stepped forward slowly. "That," he said, "is time well spent." He turned to the audience. "Thank you for giving room to something gentle." He looked at the band and nodded. He looked at Nadia. She nodded back, both hands pressed around her headset. The camera cut to Mr. Hale. He held his mic, then lowered it. He seemed to be making a decision. He whispered to the judge beside him, then signaled to the floor manager for another mic. The floor manager raised a hand. "Not yet, they were supposed to go to a break." The control room voice came in the host's ear, "We can hold 30 seconds. Then we must go." The host felt the tug of the schedule like a leash. He looked at the clock. He looked at the room. He looked at Mr. Hale and then at Evelyn. At that exact moment, a door at the back of the studio opened quietly. The piano shop owner who had loaned the instrument stood there, unsure if he should step in. A stagehand waved him forward. He carried a plain envelope. He handed it to Nadia with both hands and whispered. Nadia's eyes widened. She looked to the host. She looked to Mr. Hale. She looked to Evelyn. She made a quick choice and walked the envelope to the judge's table. Mr. Hale took the envelope and nodded. He stood and faced the camera. "May I?" he asked the host. The host held his mic out to him as if passing a torch. The control room said, "We have 20 seconds." The host said, "We will take what we need." Mr. Hale spoke, his voice steady but moved. "Evelyn," he said, "you reminded us that talent can arrive quietly and still fill a room. You also reminded us that many people stop their lessons when life gets busy, and many never start because they think it is too late. We can change that." He held up the envelope. The seal caught the light. He did not open it yet. He looked to Nadia. She was already stepping toward the stage with a clipboard in one hand and a pen in the other, the way a person brings tools to build something good. The sponsor rep had tears on her face. She nodded, a little unsure, but willing. The host took a half step closer to Evelyn so she would not feel alone in the wide stage. Liam, at the side, squeezed his hands together to stop them from shaking. Mrs. Khan held her breath. The young mother pressed her palm to her heart. The little boy leaned forward, eyes round and shining. The studio lights softened a shade, not because a tech moved a slider, but because the room itself seemed to ask for calm. The band held their instruments very still. Even the cameras seemed to lean in. Mr. Hale turned the envelope over in his hands. He looked at the judges, then at the audience, then at Evelyn. He lifted the mic again, ready to say words that would not be a joke or a stunt, but a living thing that could change days beyond this one. He opened his mouth to speak. From the wings, the producer hurried on with a single sheet of paper and a bold header at the top. She passed it to the host and whispered quickly. The host read the first line, blinked, and looked up, surprised. He glanced at Evelyn, then at the camera, then at Mr. Hale with the unopened envelope. The whole room waited, breath held, as two good options stood side by side on the stage, the judge's envelope and the producer's new paper. Evelyn stood at the piano, hands folded, calm as a small lake. She did not know what would happen next. She only knew it would matter. The host lifted the paper for the camera to see, but the words were still turned away from the audience. Mr. Hale lifted the envelope just a little higher. The applause from a moment ago fell into a hush you could almost touch. The red light on the main camera glowed. The clock ticked. The next word would open a door. The host looked from the paper in his hand to Mr. Hale's unopened envelope and then back to Evelyn. He took a steady breath, as if choosing the right order to place two good gifts on a table. First, he said, lifting the paper, our team has made a decision. We are retiring the segment called Play It or Pay It. Starting today, it will be replaced with a new part of the show called Begin Again. No tricks. No jokes on people. Real stories. Real attempts. Time and respect. He turned the paper toward the nearest cameras so viewers at home could read the big headline that Nadia had just printed, Begin Again, a space for learning at any age. The audience clapped, not because a sign told them to, but because the words felt right. Nadia stood in the wings and pressed her headset closer to catch the control room's reaction. The line came through, approved. Stay with it. She closed her eyes for half a second and smiled, then opened them to keep working. The host nodded to Mr. Hale. And now, the envelope. Mr. Hale broke the seal with careful fingers. Inside was a short letter and a bank slip. He looked at the piano shop owner at the back, who lifted two hands as if to say, it is simple. Mr. Hale read aloud, Dear Evelyn, thank you for reminding us what a piano is for. Our shop will deliver a tuned upright piano to your home this week at no cost. We will also donate 9 more uprights, one each, to 9 community centers in our city and cover their first year of tuning. We hope many hands will find a home on those keys. With respect, Malik and Daughters Piano Co. People stood again. A few cried openly. The security guard wiped at his eye with the back of his hand and laughed at himself softly. Mr. Hale lowered the letter and raised the bank slip. There is also a fund, he said, voice steady. The shop has placed the first amount in an account called the Evelyn Grant. It will pay for 100 starter lessons for adults who want to begin or begin again. The host looked stunned for a second and then full of quiet joy. He stepped closer to Evelyn so she would not stand alone in the new light. Would you be willing, he asked softly, to help us steward this? To advise us so we do this with care? Yes, she said, just as softly. But only if we make the door wide. No one is made to feel small. We promise, he said. The sponsor representative took a small step forward from the wings. She seemed nervous, then brave. Our company would like to support Begin Again, she said into a handheld mic. We will fund the segment for the season and pay the teachers at community centers for their time. We are sorry for past ideas that were not kind. We will do better. The room gave her a gentle, forgiving applause. People could hear that she meant it. The host turned to the audience and the camera. For anyone at home, he said, there is now a page on our website, beginagain.show. You can sign up if you wish to learn, or you can offer an instrument, or you can volunteer time. We will connect you with a center near you. The control room voice said, you have 1 minute. The host looked at Evelyn. Would you close this hour for us? She sat and placed her hands on the keys as if greeting an old friend at a door. She played the small lullaby she had written years ago, the one with a rise and a fall that felt like breathing. This time, the band did not join. The room did not cough or move. The music wrapped around them like a soft shawl. When she finished, she lifted her hands and nodded to the piano, and the show faded to credits with applause that sounded like warmth. Afterward, backstage was busy but kind. Crew members thanked Evelyn one by one, the light tech, the camera operator who had held a long close-up on her hands, the stagehand who had found the crate for the bench the week before. Nadia came forward last. You did not just fill time, she said. You filled the room. Thank you. On the ride home, Liam's phone lit like a small city. The clip of the encore spread quickly. People wrote, I watched with my dad on the phone, and I pulled over to listen, and I'm 59 and I just looked up how to start piano. Evelyn read only a few messages. Too many would crowd her heart. But the ones she saw felt like small candles. 2 days later, the piano shop's truck parked on their street. The movers carried a simple, well-loved upright up the stairs with soft steps and light jokes that made the work easier. They placed the piano by the window, where afternoon sun touched the wall. The tuner arrived after them and bent over the open lid with his careful tool. He hummed lightly to find the right pitch. When he finished, he pressed one key and looked at Evelyn. "It is ready." Evelyn sat and played a C scale slowly, then a simple song that had comforted her on winter evenings long ago. The sound filled the room and went out the open window. A neighbor walking a dog paused on the landing to listen. The dog said, "Music makes listeners of all kinds." Liam set up a small folding table and a sign-up sheet. The first weekend, 6 adults came to their apartment building's common room for a free class. They were from different days of life. A retired bus driver named Jorge. A seamstress named Anika who had always wanted to play the melody her mother sang while sewing. A nurse who worked nights and said she could give 20 minutes a day to music. The boy from downstairs stood in the doorway, shy, then entered with his notebook and a pencil. Evelyn began the class with posture and breath. She spoke slowly, but not heavily. "We will start with 5 minutes, she said. "We will not race." She showed them how to curve their fingers, how to let their shoulders rest, how to keep the wrists floating like small boats. She did not flood them with terms. She gave them one shape, then another. She praised effort and noticed small wins. Jorge found his first smooth thumb under motion and laughed aloud. Anika played a right-hand pattern with even tone, and her eyes shone. The nurse said the quiet of the keys felt like a deep drink of water. Nadia and a small crew filmed one short piece that first weekend, but they stayed back, as promised. They did not ask for repeats or add noise. They recorded hands and smiles and the sound of people breathing a little easier. When the piece aired, it was sober and warm. It made more people call, not to chase a moment on TV, but to find their own moment in a quiet room. The 9 donated pianos reached the community centers within 2 weeks. Each center posted a picture of their new instrument with a simple note, "Come learn." Teachers signed up. Some were retired. Some taught in schools and wanted to give a few hours on Saturday mornings. The show's website connected people who had instruments in closets to neighbors who needed them. A van began to go around the city each Friday to pick up keyboards and deliver them to new homes. On the side of the van was a hand-painted phrase, "Begin again." The sponsor kept their promise. They paid teachers and covered tuning and music books. They did not put their logo on the sheet music or ask for loud signs. Their name appeared once at the end of the segment, small and neat. It was enough. Mr. Hale visited the community class one afternoon without cameras. He took off his jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and sat on the bench like any other student. He stumbled on his first left-hand pattern and laughed at himself. "I judged too fast," he said, mostly to himself. "I can learn slowly." He practiced for 10 minutes and left with a page of simple exercises. He sent a thank you note the next day, "Your patience is a teacher to me." The young assistant from the studio started lessons on her lunch breaks. The security guard bought a beginner's book for his mother and asked Evelyn to sign it. Evelyn wrote, "For your hours of care 5 minutes a day is enough." The piano shop owner, Malik, came by with his daughters to see the class and left having promised 2 more used keyboards he had repaired in his spare time. Liam set up a simple website for the Evelyn Grant. People could apply for starter lessons with a short note about why they wanted to learn. The notes were small and true. "I want to play at my granddaughter's birthday. I want to feel calm for 10 minutes before dinner. I want to use my hands for something gentle after a day with heavy boxes." The grant began to help, one person at a time. It was not a storm. It was steady rain. At the studio, Begin Again ran once each week. They featured a barber learning violin, a baker who loved a small drum, a grandmother and grandson doing first chords together. Evelyn appeared sometimes to offer a tip or a kind word. The host seemed a little different now. He left more space after people spoke. His jokes were lighter and kinder. He apologized on air one day for the tone of past bits. "We are learning, too," he said. Nadia's shoulders no longer looked tired all the time. She worked hard, but the work felt clean. People wrote to her from other cities asking how to start their own Begin Again corners. She sent back a simple guide and a note: "Make room. Listen. Pay your teachers." One evening, the show held a small event at one of the centers. Students who had begun only weeks before played a few bars each. No one rushed. No one compared. The little boy from Eleanor's building stood straight at the keyboard and played his C scale with proud, steady hands. The room cheered as if he had won a medal. In his way, he had. After the event, Evelyn and Liam walked home under a sky that held the last light of day. They climbed the stairs and opened their door to the piano by the window. The room smelled faintly of tea and wood polish. Neighbors' voices floated up the stairwell and then settled into quiet. Evelyn sat and placed her fingers, not to perform, but to be. She played the first bars of her lullaby, then paused and smiled at Liam. "What is it?" he asked. "I was thinking," she said. "When I first saw that old upright at the studio, I felt small. But small is not the same as weak. Small can be gentle. Small can enter rooms with care and change them." Liam nodded. "You changed that room," he said. "We all did," she answered. "They made space. We made sound. The breeze moved the curtain. The city hummed softly under the window." Evelyn began to play again. The notes floated out across the evening, honest and clear. A neighbor paused in the hallway to listen. A child on the floor above set a toy down to hear better. In the apartment across the way, an older woman hummed along in a voice that had sung many goodbyes and many hellos. When the song ended, there was no applause. There was only a soft peace that rested on the room like a blanket. Evelyn closed the key lid, stood, and touched the treble clef brooch at her collar with 2 fingers. She walked to the kitchen to set the kettle on for tea. Liam leaned on the door frame and watched her move through the quiet. "Tomorrow," she said, almost to herself, "we will start again with scales. 5 minutes first. Then we will see where the day wishes to sing." He smiled. "Begin again," he said. She nodded. "Begin again," she echoed. And somewhere, in a community center where a new piano had just found its corner, a person sat down, placed their fingers on middle C, and started the first gentle step of a path that had been waiting for them all along. The door was wide. The room was kind. The music stayed.